First, let's just talk just briefly about these two cases. Rebecca Brado, which was the big one that is really making headlines all over the country. She was jailed for ignoring a court order to have her child vaccinated, correct? But a court order she agreed to, which was the big issue the judge had. That's correct.
She was having a custody dispute with the father of her child, yes. And a few years ago she agreed to vaccinate the kids, and she at some point had a change of heart and a change of mind and decided not to, and that's why she ultimately got jailed, not because she didn't want to vaccinate her kids, but it was because she violated the court's order to do so.
Okay, and then the same thing, we had a second case that came up, and it was also a custody type case, is that right?
That's correct, and in that case, the Child Protective Services got involved, saying that your child isn't being vaccinated, we have concerns about it. It got up to the court system, and at that point, the court stepped in again and ordered the vaccination of the child.
Okay, so the first question I think a lot of parents want to know over this is, are you as a parent legally obligated to have your child vaccinated?
In Michigan, it's both a yes and a no. The state law does require children to get vaccinated for things that have been traditionally vaccinated for, like polio, whooping cough, tetanus shots, and things like that. However, our state has also passed a law in 2014 that says if you want to opt out of that requirement because you have religious or philosophical beliefs, you can do so. You just have to take an educational class at a health department to certify you to do so.
My understanding looking into this is that the number of waivers, because you're then granted a waiver if you go through that, incite objections to getting your kids vaccinated, the number of waivers granted has actually gone down since they started requiring the classes.
It has, and the idea of the class is to make sure you know the risks and the benefits to vaccinations, and as we've seen, most numbers have gone down once people go through that program.
All right, so legally I say, you know, you can go through this, but what happens in these court cases we're seeing is if you have two parents, a child has two parents and they're maybe getting divorced or they are divorced and they have a difference of opinion. This is where these cases are starting to come to light, right?
Right, and the court system is really only interested in one thing, and that's the best interest of the child. So the parents' interests really are secondary to what's best for the child, and when they can't agree, a judge is the one that steps in and says, based on all the circumstances I've seen, I believe this child should be vaccinated, or I believe the child should not be vaccinated.
Wow, so this is really an issue that can go to the courts and a judge can ultimately make that decision.
Absolutely. I think it's going to grow, especially with the cases we've seen here in Michigan.
Yes.
I think it's going to grow across the state and nationally. Now the debate is now on hot fire.
Well, it certainly has made headlines around the country. I even think around the world, perhaps. But what advice do you have for parents? Do you have any who choose not to vaccinate their children?
Well, the one thing the state has said is if you go to a doctor and have a doctor examine your child and give you a recommendation, that will be a step in your favor if you do wish or don't wish to vaccinate your child. So my advice would be take the necessary steps to protect yourself. Go to a doctor, have a doctor's letter saying, I examined this child and I don't believe vaccinations are appropriate, or I do. That way, if the state does come after you, you would now have some medical advice that can back you up.
Interesting. And I understand in some states that there's just waivers for religious reasons, but in Michigan, it really can be almost any personal reason, correct?
Correct. The state says religious objection, philosophical objection, or any other objection. So you can come up with, there's a wide open area that you can say, I don't feel like vaccinating my child, and that's what people have done.
Well, I'm glad you were here to talk about this. It's certainly in the news a lot, and people are talking about it, wondering. So Clarence Doss, thank you so much for being with us. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.